Good morning. This is Weather and Climate Geography 3500. Today is April the 20th, 2021. And so we will start sharing the screen so that I can get us caught up on what is expected over the coming weeks. So looking at the course schedule, we still have due this week assignment 11, impacts of climate change upon the U.S., which is based upon the work that, or the reading assignment from last week. And so this assignment will essentially enhance your understanding of how climate change is measured. So oftentimes we hear about, that there's global warming, the climate is changing, so on and so forth. And the question is, well, how is that determined? I mean, what are the criteria upon which we base climate change phenomena? And so this exercise will take you through how climate change is measured and assessed, and getting us a little bit into some of the policy issues involved with climate change. And so that is, of course, due today. Also coming up for this week is looking at this week's schedule. There's just going to be a discussion in a few moments about El Nino, La Nina, and global air currents and wind belts. That will take place in a few moments. And we will also you have article reviews 8, 9, and 10. They will all be due on the 27th. I think I did not remember to post that Dropbox earlier. And so that'll close out the semester in terms of assignments. I won't give another assignment this week. So if you can just get assignment 11 done with, with the lenient penalties, that'll be fine. But the big thing of last two things, of course, are your term paper, final draft, and PowerPoint, which will be due on the last day of class. And so you'll just submit the term paper and accompanying PowerPoint presentation here. So if you remember from the syllabus, the term paper outline is here. Some of you have submitted drafts. I've made comments. So again, I'll let the focus for the last couple of weeks be upon your climate analysis term paper, and also you should present a live or recorded synopsis of your term paper using Microsoft PowerPoint. So you should create a PowerPoint presentation and then present it. You can present it in Zoom and record your presentation, since we're not going to be able to do these live. If you have any questions about that, please let me know. So again, just to reiterate and make sure we're all on the same page, the assignments due for this week include assignment 11, impacts of climate change upon the U.S. Also, the article reviews will be due next week, as will your term paper. Now, the final exam, I am planning to release the final exam on Friday. So that will give you a week to complete the final exam. It will have basically the same format as the midterm exam. It will be multiple choice, and you will answer those questions. So I will make an announcement about that again later on. Today's class recording will I'll record this today. There will be another recording for this week, which will emphasize the final exam and what's left of the semester. So that will be released sometime between today and Thursday, probably Thursday morning. I think I'll be able to do that Thursday morning at the regular class time, now that I'm thinking about it. So look forward to that. So without any further delay, let's get into today's topic, week 13, next to the last week. And our topic is El Nino and La Nina. So you've probably heard something about El Nino and La Nina. I'll try to break it down as simply as possible over the next few minutes. So let me get this started in the next few minutes. Okay, so El Nino and La Nina, you've probably heard something about the El Nino phenomenon and then La Nina. And so the textbook has a pretty, I don't want to say complicated, but a pretty deep discussion about El Nino and La Nina. And so let's start with normal conditions. So El Nino is essentially a variation, a change in temperature in the equatorial Pacific Ocean. So what happens is periodically, for reasons that a lot of scientists do not understand. Let's go to this screen. Here in the equatorial Pacific Ocean, there is warming that occurs periodically. And so you can see on this graphic going from 1980 to perhaps 2000, you can see this change in conditions in the equatorial Pacific Ocean. And so you might wonder, so here's a better image showing the departure in temperatures and the historical El Ninos and La Nina periods. So here we have El Nino being a warming trend in the equatorial Pacific, and then La Nina being a cooling trend. This is a very good graphic to focus upon, just to understand the history of El Nino and La Nina. So you might ask, okay, well, Dr. Padgett, well, so what? So the Pacific Ocean warms up in the equatorial zone every now and then. Let's take a look. Let's get out of this PowerPoint for just a second and go back and look at something else, another graphic that will probably give you a better idea of what's happening here. So here are thermal images or satellite images of El Nino and La Nina. And if you can see this graphic on the left-hand side, that's the west coast of the United States, that's Alaska, and you really can't see South America here, but that's just outside of view. And you can clearly see this red color area symbol representing the region around the Pacific Ocean that is getting warmer at a certain period. I don't know which El Nino or La Nina this is, but this is just typical of what happened. So the question is, okay, well, so what? Why are we looking at this change in temperature in the Pacific Ocean? You know, what's the big deal? You might ask. Well, the big deal is that the Pacific Ocean, just the Pacific Ocean by itself, comprises half of the world's ocean area. And so considering that the earth is 3/4 covered by water, and considering that the Pacific Ocean is half of that ocean surface, then it's understandable that anything that happens of significance in the Pacific Ocean is going to have global implications. Some of the issues associated with El Nino and La Nina are places that are normally wet experience droughts. Maybe places that experience droughts or relatively dry get torrential rainfall. All kinds of things are associated with El Nino and La Nina. Let's look at the concern for us here in North America. So first of all, you can see the west coast of North America here. And so what happens during El Nino when there is this reversal, let me go back to the slide deck. And so here we have, let's go back. Here we have normal conditions. So under normal conditions, the flow around the equator is from east to west. And that east to west flow is driven primarily by the northeast and southeast trade winds that normally flow from east to west. And also you'll notice the global ocean currents. And you can see here that in the equatorial region, normally the flow is from east to west. That's what normally happens. As you can see during El Nino, we go from these normal conditions to essentially a reversal of the flow to a west to east flow. Okay, so how does that impact the west coast of the United States? Well, the west coast of the United States is markedly different from the east coast in terms of the characteristics of the Pacific Ocean versus the Atlantic Ocean. First of all, if we go back and look at the ocean currents, notice the West Coast is influenced by the Gulf Stream current, which brings warm water from the Caribbean and the equatorial Atlantic Ocean up along the East Coast. So if you ever go to a North Carolina, South Carolina, or Florida or Gulf beach, you experience warmer water. Notice that the West Coast of North America primarily is influenced by a cold current, the California current. So the water is significantly cooler if you've ever been to a California beach or like. Also, there is a relatively shallow continental shelf off the coast of Florida. So if you've been to a Florida beach, you've probably noticed that you can wade out quite far before it drops off into deep water, in many cases. However, when you go to the West Coast, that's not the case. It's a much steeper drop off, much rougher waters and deeper waters. So swimming off the coast of California is inherently dangerous compared to Florida, just under normal conditions. However, under El Nino conditions, there are much higher tides that are experienced along the West Coast. And so prior to our being able to predict El Nino via satellite imagery, when we did not know when El Nino was coming, a lot of unsuspecting swimmers lost their lives due to the wave action along the West Coast. Let me show you a couple of case studies if I can find them very quickly. Well, there was the infamous case in 2002. Here's a follow-up story. So there was a sorority, happened to be African-American sorority, and they were in 2002 undergoing initiation activities along the ocean, and two of the students drowned during that. And so it's pretty infamous case. And so you might wonder, like, well, how did this happen? Well, it says here it was high surf. And so if we go back and look at various years, you can see that that period around 2002 perhaps was, let's see, well, it's not, yes, the 2002 was an El Nino year. So during that year, there were unusually high tides, and unfortunately, those young women lost their lives. This is a pretty infamous case. This took place in Los Angeles near California. Another case, I guess this was this has been a while ago. Let me make sure this is the right case. So I was unable to find the specific case. Usually I can find it right away, but there was a case where where baptism in California resulted in a drowning. But let's look at something else that happens in California during El Nino years. So let's put some images up. In California, let me do this. You go landslide, homes destroyed, California. So in California, if you've ever been there, people like to build their homes on cliffs overlooking the ocean. And unfortunately, in some cases, wave action can erode away not, those that are near the shore. I'm getting some of the same images, but obviously during El Nino years, these landslides can be triggered much more easily. And so you can have erosion of coastal areas resulting in landslides in California. But the reason that that it's important for us to be aware of El Nino is, of course, to prevent those types of deaths from high tides and damage from high tides that are higher during El Nino years, and again, can be quite dangerous. Now, also, going back to the wind belts, another effect of El Nino is that during El Nino years, the wind belts, the trade wind belts that normally push hurricanes into North America are blunted by El Nino. So during El Nino years, we tend to have less proliferation of hurricanes. So the data that we have on this slide don't go back far enough. Let's see if we can find some more recent El Nino data. Okay, let's look at La Nina specifically from last year, and why is it important that we look at La Nina? Well, if you remember, last year was a record-setting year with regard to hurricanes. So last week we focused upon hurricanes and tropical storms. And if you remember, last year was a record-setting year if we go back to the content from last week. And we just saw that well, actually, we go back to week 10 is when we really focused upon tropical storms and hurricanes. And in addition to your reading, you found that 2020 was a record-shattering year in terms of numbers of named storms, storms making landfall in the US, and so on and so forth. So presumably, you would expect that if El Nino blunts the formation of hurricanes, then La Nina would actually result in increased numbers of hurricanes. So as you can see from this World Meteorological Organization report, that indeed La Nina was developing and underdeveloping as we entered summer of last year, which again makes sense if you look at what happened during the hurricane season last year in terms of its being a record-setting season with many, many, many named storms as we advanced into the late summer and early fall into the hurricane season. And so so you had plenty of readings about that and the numbers of storms. And so there's a direct correlation between these storms and what happened in the year 2020. So let's take a look at this graphic here. And so, well, so here we have Marco, August 24th, Zeta, October 28th, Delta, October, August, September. So many of these storms occurred along with the advancing El Nino period, which is what we would expect. So that's another way that we, meaning North America, is affected by El Nino and La Nina, is we have increased hurricane risk and production when we are in those years when there is La Nina. And so that's why we study this phenomenon, because it results in quite a bit of disruption in terms of droughts and weather hazards. And you can see here from El Nino, the El Nino of 1997 and 98, the losses that occurred in just in the U.S. in terms of billions of dollars from disasters, crop loss, so on and so forth. Of course, in this case, they're showing economic gains and losses. Perhaps there was a warmer winter than usual due to the El Nino period. And so again, we're able to use climate models to predict the onset of El Nino and La Nina. So with this year being a La Nina year, the hurricane season forecasts have been for this season to be quite active. That remains to be seen. Still, even with all of our technologies, difficult to predict exactly what will happen as a result of. So again, with the satellites and buoy systems, and I actually spent some time not working, but I went to a workshop focused upon exactly how we meaning human beings, make these predictions. And so there are a series of buoys that float out in the Pacific Ocean with weather stations on them and GPS receivers that essentially are the basis of how we track the onset of El Nino and La Nina. So the observation of this phenomenon has been in place over a pretty long period of time. And so you are to, so you have the slideshow, you have some other information has been provided to you in this presentation. And so you should be prepared to address this material when we get to the final exam, which starts presumably on Friday. So you should have some of the impacts of El Nino here, increased temperatures in some places and precipitation in others on a global scale. Last but certainly not least, you might ask, well, why is it called El Nino? You know, El Nino was the first term. La Nina was discovered later on. But, well, fishermen along the west coast of South America periodically, this is prior to the advent of satellites, fishermen would notice that there was a change in the type of fish they would catch periodically. And they would notice that this change, or El Nino, would oftentimes begin around December. And so if you notice, El Nino and La Nina start to develop, in the fall, winter of the year. And so El Nino was noticed amongst these fishermen usually around Christmas. And so El Nino literally is Christ. El Nino in Spanish is the little boy or the baby boy. In this case, it's Christ. So that's where El Nino got its name, just FYI, just for your information. Okay, so again, just to reiterate, you have for this week, article reviews 8, 9, and 10. Like I said, I'm going to make all those due on the 27th of April because, and then after that, that's the only assignments for this week, other than continuing to work on your term paper and the PowerPoint presentation. And then, of course, the final exam will be launched on Friday. I will make an announcement about that on Thursday. So thank you for watching this video presentation. And if you have any questions, please, please let me know.